nobody has all the right answers, right? We all have to do it together. And if there's anything that any psychedelic practice has taught me is like, you can't do it alone. We're social creatures. We're meant to show up in community.
Welcome to Psychedelic Source, where wisdom meets practice in the evolving landscape of psychedelic medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Sandra Dreisbach, and I'm here to help you navigate the complex intersection of ethics, business, and personal growth in the psychedelic space. Whether you're a practitioner, therapist, entrepreneur, or simply curious about this transformative field, you've found your source for authentic dialogue, practical resources, and community connection. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the stories, strategies, and ethical considerations that matter most to our growing ecosystem. Let's tap in to our inner source of wisdom and explore what it means to build a sustainable and ethical psychedelic future together.
The information shared on this podcast, our website, and other platforms may be triggering for some viewers and readers and is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical, legal, or therapeutic advice. While we explore topics related to altered states of consciousness, we do not endorse or encourage illegal activities or substance use. Always research your local laws and consult qualified professionals for guidance. The content provided is, as is, and we are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared. Stay supported and informed, act responsibly, and enjoy the podcast.
Well, in this episode, we have Erica Siegal. She is a psychedelic-assisted psychotherapist, community organizer, and harm reduction advocate. She has spent the last 20 years exploring diverse ways to create impactful, connective experiences while increasing community safety and wellness. And she's also a friend of mine, and I cannot say more wonderful things about her work and advocacy. And as a businesswoman as well, running both two organizations. In 2019, she founded Nest Harm Reduction and Consulting, a California-based mental health practice that provides psychotherapy, outreach, education, and integration services. And recently, she founded Shine Collective, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting those who have experienced harm from abuse, assault, neglect, coercion, and manipulation within psychedelic practice and psychedelic communities. So incredibly relevant for being well-resourced in this space, both whether you're talking about her work with Nest or with her work in Shine. And she herself has had experiences. She worked on an MDMA-assisted psychotherapy clinical trials from 2014 to 2019, and has spent over a decade providing harm reduction and crisis response services at events, festivals worldwide. It's with great pleasure that I get to introduce her to you today. And in this conversation, You'll obviously get to see again my friendship and relationship with Erica. We're also accountability partners in relationship because we both do work around ethical practice, harm reduction, risk reduction in this space, and you'll see, a lot of her insights and perspectives, both from her lived experience with her own journeys and her own wisdom in terms of how to, in some sense, live psychedelically, but also the challenges about how do we do this work around harm and risk reduction while still keeping the joy, keeping that sense of presence, of creativity, of personal expression. And you also hear about her relationship from her Jewish ancestry and community and her life, and how she brings part of that literally to the table in relationship. And while this isn't focused on, a lot of the risks and harms that happen, you get a sense of how she has a sort of balanced, more integrated life experience in relationship with psychedelic practice and where she lives and in community, including food. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a real joy and delight to bring her in relationship to all of you. It's a beautiful journey. Well, welcome, Erica. I could not be more tickled pink to have you here. We've been friends for a while. I know you, of course, from Nest, but actually for us, it was based on having being on the same ethics advisory board. Uh, but I'll let you say a little bit about yourself. I've done a little bit of an introduction. Could you say a little bit about you and your work and what inspires you in the psychedelic space?
Oh, hi. It's so good to be here. I am also tickled pink. I like that we're in our winter pinks, our like greens and reds today. Sure. I'm Erica Siegel. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm based in Southern California. And I have spent the past 15-ish years of my career working in various aspects of psychedelic research, psychedelic culture, and drug education and harm reduction. And so we have been friends for a couple of years because we've done some ethics work together. You came and spoke at the conference that Nest Harm Reduction hosted in 2022 in Palm Springs.
Amazing, groundbreaking conference. I mean, it's okay to say a little bit about that. I think a lot of people would be curious because I think that the recordings are still available, right?
Yeah, the recordings are available. They're available on our website, on nestharmreduction.com. We hosted a conference that was about ethics and care in altered states. And we brought in not just psychedelic practitioners, but other practitioners and facilitators who work in altered states, whether that's shamanic drumming or whether that's in sex work or whether that's in breath work, and really learned about how adjacent altered states practitioners create safe spaces and deal with ethical issues. I'm a big advocate of not reinventing the wheel. And so the more we can learn from each other, the safer we'll be able to create our communities. And then out of that conference, I started a nonprofit called Shine Collective. We are about to go into our second year of operation. And so very grassrootsy, very startup. Um, and we specifically work with people who have been harmed or had severe adverse reactions while working with psychedelic medicines. And this is a whole range of harms that are getting reported, not just in physical harm or sexual harm, but a lot of um, severe spiritual trauma, a lot of emotional dysregulation and moral injury when people
Right.
are harmed in these spaces. And so it's been a pleasure working with you and Epic and some of our other ethical friends in psychedelia to figure out how we're going to make it safer and how we're going to make it better. And so not only does Shine work with helping to find resources and provide education to people who have been harmed. Um, but hopefully in 2025, we will be doing more work with facilitators who want to improve their ethical practices, facilitators who might be experiencing burnout and causing
Mhm. Yep.
unintentional harm, which we're seeing a lot of in the space as well. The oops, I didn't, the perfect storm of I didn't realize that this is what
Right.
was going to happen. Or what I like to say is opening up a portal that you don't know how to close, which happens surprisingly frequently in really minor adverse reactions, but we
No,
also see
well,
some big
and maybe
ones.
we could take a moment to jump into that for just a little bit. I kind of want to talk about all the lovely sourcing that you've given our community here. But what can you tell us a little bit more about what it means to open a door that you can't close? Like for someone who's never heard that expression, or how you can explain to someone, maybe someone who's never journeyed before or gone into altered states. What would that mean?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Um, I am not a neuroscientist, right? I'm a community-based social worker, and so I try to use as much like layman's term understanding for the general public when I talk about these things. If you want to dive into the like neuroscience, biochemical things that are happening with psychedelics, that could be another podcast. Probably not this.
No, not this podcast. We're happy to have scientists here. Where, but I deeply appreciate the kind of resources you're providing.
Sure. So let's talk about, right? There's a variety of psychedelic experiences that are available and accessible, and that will continue to expand, whether that expands in a medical setting or whether that expands through decriminalization. I am an advocate for all avenues that lead to the heart. But when we take ketamine or psilocybin or MDMA or something like this, we're really starting to deeply access feelings, emotions, past memories. And what I like to say is like when you take a psychedelic, you don't get to choose your journey. You don't get to be like, all
Right.
right, I'm gonna like work on my intimacy issues. And then the psychedelic experience is going to give you something that is not that, right? Because you can't always get what you want. And so sometimes we think that we're going into a psychedelic journey or a facilitated session with the intention of working on some past trauma that needs to be resolved. And all of the sudden, you're having a godlike encounter and a spiritual awakening that was completely unexpected, not only for you as the person who is going through the experience, but also for the facilitator. And that is an example where we get things that are, right, like positive, but there are also really dark, really hard, really disturbing, re-traumatizing, or initially traumatizing psychedelic experiences that we can have.
Yeah, no, I love that as a way of talking about, what is the door you're opening in a psychedelic or altered state, since we want to be broad in our approach, right? But when you knock on that door, you may think what door you're opening is like, oh, I think I'm going to open up, like you were saying, on the intimacy door,
Mhm.
right? And you open the door, and turns out what was behind there was this trauma.
Yeah.
Right? And unexpected, or like, like you were mentioning, a divine experience. But what you were preparing for, what your mindset was about, right, was like, well, no, I was trying to build intimacy. That was the door I was planning on opening and the door I was planning on closing. But what came out was God or the divine, or what came out was my childhood trauma, right? um and if that's the idea of, opening a door we're not prepared to close, what could someone do to know whether or not they're opening, how can they prepare themselves in a way that they know that they're gonna be prepared to close it?
Well, I think making sure that you not only have supportive, understanding community to come home to after your experience, but you also know the relationship scope of practice and like ability to do long-term integration with your psychedelic facilitator. And so what we're finding is people are like, I'm going to go work with this mushroom facilitator who is like a weekend experience,
Right.
right?
And
And
I'll be back to work on Monday.
right. And it's like, oh, I actually can't. I mean, I had a friend of mine. This is a really long time ago. I haven't thought about this story in a while. Who was a ICU nurse, um, and went down to Mexico and had a 5-MeO DMT experience and tried to go back to being a nurse like 2 days later and could not deal with the physical, blood, guts, trauma, noise, high stimulation environment, and ended up having to call in the sick to work for like a week because they couldn't compartmentalize the things
Yeah.
that they needed to compartmentalize to do their job. And so, we're seeing this like minimization of how unique and special these experiences are. Because it's like, oh, let's go like out to we have media influences where we have, Gwyneth Paltrow being like, oh yeah, I went to Joshua Tree and take some mushrooms and just like solve my marriage problems. Like it is pervasive everywhere. Every talk show, every like it is becoming it's being talked about in the mainstream in a way that it never has before,
Right.
in a way that is lighthearted and comical. When we know that it has the potential for some really severe transformation on both ends of that spectrum. It can really shift your life into a positive mindset, and it can also really shift into um into some darker, harder timelines.
I really love that you kind of put it that way. Like, it's like, it's going to it has the possibility, I'll even say, it's not a guarantee even, right? That's gonna create these really big shifts in your life, and a lot of times that's what attracts people. Uh,
Right.
but you cannot predict what kind of shift or how that's going to manifest, even if it's still a good idea to set an intention, right? And to have, some sense of what you are planning on doing with the hubris, with the respect, with the understanding that that may not be where you're going, right? And planning and preparing um, I don't wanna just personally just at least from my perspective, don't wanna just personally blame, like, whatever's happening in the media, right? But I think it's also how we've approached it as a culture, right? In
Yeah.
terms of the West, like where that the recreational setting and what's kind of evolved, or even, some of how the underground approach, has and has not been. But which is really diverse, right? There's a lot of really high, prepared people in all levels, right? And all handling of it. But, I wanna come back now to what you were sharing about your work with Nest and with Shine, and even the conference, because I think all 3 demonstrate how you've been showing up in community to be not just, yourself well-resourced in building a community around you, but and having those conversations and having that support for yourself and those you're connected to, but also in terms of what it really looks like to create that in our world. Tell me a little bit about how did you come into this work in working with altered states and psychedelic practice? Or if you'd rather, you can tell us a little bit about, you as a person, getting to know Erica.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for reflecting back to me the ways that I show up in community. Oftentimes this is really challenging and sometimes lonely work. Um, I'm a, telehealth therapist or like work from home. And so the ways in which we build community, I think, is really important. And I think that this is why psychedelics and social work are so important, is because we're watching everybody kind of like practice in their own silos or practice in their own lineage or practice out, outside of community in these little like pockets, and really using social work as a societal like macro lens of looking at community design is like nobody has all the right answers, right? We all have to do it together. And if there's anything that any psychedelic practice has taught me is like you can't do it alone. We can't, like, we're social creatures. We're meant to show up in community, and Um, and COVID really separated us and siloed us. And so I like to say that I like to conspire with people, right? When we look at the root,
Positive conspiracies of removing people from silos, connecting people, rooting them, grounding them.
rooting them, grounding them, but also breathing with them, right? If you look at the
Ah.
Latin root, that etymology of conspire, it's to breathe with. And so at some point when I decided to host the conference 2 years ago, I was like, these are the people that I actually want to like sit in a room with and smell and like, right, and like, rub up against each other's elbows to be like,
Which we
"Ooh,
did. I think I have a picture of me on your lap. I mean, it's all PC, everyone. It was at dinner.
yeah, we had like lovely meals together." And I just wanted to have an experience where we could all get together. And I loved that I chose Palm Springs as the location because we were all kind of like nuzzled up in this little hotel in Palm Springs where we ate all our meals together and got to like sit in the hot tub afterwards and chat and have brunch and then also learn from each other. And I think Adriana Kurtzer, who was there, who is also joining the board of Shine, um, she said it was the most well-fed conference that she's ever been to.
Yeah. Not to like, you're like, I still remember the churros.
Yeah, but it's like one of these things is like, well, we also can't learn if we're hungry. And so when you say like get to know me, right? I was raised in a really vibrant Jewish community in Cleveland, Ohio. I have a lot of the work that I do, the way that I operate is from the lens of a Jewish woman. um, I'm on the board of Shefa, which is the Jewish Psychedelic Support Network. I also co-facilitate group ketamine experiences for Jewish individuals. And so I find that having a strong root in my own indigenous spiritual practice um, gives me a beautiful lens to be able to do this work. Um, And also, I'm not for everyone. Like, not everybody wants to work with,
Yeah, I still
like
plan to make that shirt. I'm not for everyone, right? But I love that you shared that, like, it really comes from being in relationship with your own community
Yeah.
that you come back to and that you are literally sourced from. And that you kinda, like, I mean, communing over food, breathing together as you were sharing, right? That is, that real felt sense, of being with, in relationship, in support of one another, and reaching across thresholds.
And I really think that and this is we can get into psychedelic integration and, like, sourcing and tools, but as we move forward and technology integrates more into our daily lives, however that is going to look,
A lot of people talking
uh,
about how AI is gonna be integrated as a tool in this space, so I
uh,
appreciate you bringing this up.
yeah, and it's going to be, right? Like, trains left the station, like, we're gonna try a whole bunch of things, and we're not gonna be good at them, and we're gonna find glitches in them, and we're going to right? And we're gonna have to retool, and we're going to have to be like, "Oops, we need to make a new ethical boundary around this. We didn't realize that right, we're learning with it. We are and I think this is one of the challenges is, like, there's no mastery right now. Like, nobody knows how to do this properly, and so we, on a community level are learning together.
Right.
Um, but so I think that getting together in physical spaces
Mhm.
multiple times a year. Maybe it's like for me, it's like, oh, like Passover and Rosh Hashanah and like there's like Jewish holidays like baked in to times that we are supposed to gather and eat together. And there are times that we are supposed to gather and fast and mourn and grieve together. And I think that taking that lens that has been like instilled in me through generations and through practice in the way that I was raised is like hosting. I host campouts, I host art workshops. I'm hosting a like a creativity pop-up this weekend on Sunday at my house where just like come together and like parallel play arts and crafts with me. And so like somebody's bringing their crocheting project and we're just gonna like make food and hang out together because that's the juiciness of like living a psychedelically integrated life is knowing that like being with like-minded community, doing something artistic, like working collaboratively on something and then getting like immediate positive reinforcement. This is why I love tie-dye is because you get to like fold it up and you don't know what it's going to look like and it's like its own little psychedelic journey and then you have to wait and you get all of the like what if it doesn't turn out? What if it's not good? You get to like unwrap it and you get micro positive reinforcement of other people around you going, "Ooh, you created something beautiful." And you're like, "Oh, look, I created something beautiful." And you can see people light up from it. And so in the same ways that you can see people light up from a really beautiful psychedelic journey. And so it's like one of these things where the more we can recreate this cycle of us being together in creative process, like the healthier we will be able to weather the storms of whatever is coming.
And I love this. I love this analogy or metaphor of the psychedelic journey or altered state experiences as being a creative journey, an expression journey, right? That you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. And at least with tie dye, right? You have an external representation, right? Our internal processes and our internal journeys, it's hard to it doesn't it's at least not as ready at hand as it were to be able to show and demonstrate to the world, look, I have completed my journey, I've done my root shadow work, and ta-da, I have my butterfly self now. Do you see me now? But still, like, having that sense of community of coming together in real life, having similar processes where you're embodying that role, you're playing together with people in relationship, and it has more that lighthearted energy, that that soulful, that spirited, communal joy, I wanna even say, that you get, and I love that the aspect, despite the fact that maybe some people think that people who do work with survivors, who work in harm and risk reduction are just bantering the thing about, watch out, everyone, here are the red flags, right? Not that psychedelic safety flags, important document. But but that said, like, and what are the green flags? What are the good things we should be doing? What are the positive things? What does it mean to live psychedelically as you were, like how do we the journey of our lifetimes, right? So I love this example. I love what you're bringing to the table and creating.
I will like I'll loop it back in for
Okay, loop us.
right. Um this is also true when it comes to power dynamics and psychedelic work. Right? This is why
Absolutely.
I um I see the value of all of the work that the psychedelic industry is doing with drug development, with clinical trials, with medical validity, and all of those different things. And also, I don't think that one-on-one or therapist-client individual psychedelic experiences is the optimal setting for a lot of people to have to complete their healing journey. It might be a place to start, but the as somebody who worked on clinical trials, as somebody who was a subject in an MDMA clinical trial, right? Laying on a couch, taking MDMA with 2 sober facilitators sitting there, like, it's awkward. right? It's not, and it's such an MDMA can be such a socially healing drug that it is like small groups with friends, intimate partner work, and and being able to create safe containers for exploration where you're minimizing the power dynamic risk.
And I love that you bring this up because we were talking about community, we're talking about relationship, and some of the models that are being presented through research, right, are not necessarily as supportive as we may want them to be. But then maybe, and just to counterpoint it a little bit, right, there are people who already have therapeutic relationships, right, that then want to bring that therapeutic relationship, one of trust, and one that does have intimacy, and especially dealing with trauma maybe they've already been working on, and seeking this support and experience. So, but that's not what the clinical trials are often able to support, right, in terms of what the design allows.
Right, right, and that's also right, and that's also not the design of the way that we're seeing legalization, decriminalization roll out, which is more of the come to this service center and pay us lots of money to do this like weekend thing or this one, and like those facilitators are not going to have these long existing therapeutic relationships with people. And so I love shout out to Journey Clinical. I people have differing opinions, but what an amazing way to be able to give already existing therapists who have already existing practices and already existing relationships with their clients access and tools to be able to start looking at psychedelic work. And now some people are pro ketamine, some people are not pro ketamine. Like we can get into the politics of all of it, but also, again, this is another capillary, like, or artery that is slowly moving into wholeness with how the way psychedelics are going to be rolled out in and find their way in society.
Well, and to that, a couple things came up for me when you were sharing there. One of which was about relationship with people who were the original holders of many of these plant medicines and practices, and how that is or is not showing up right now, and what wisdom or learnings or education or relationship and community we do not have yet, or at least in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
But also, in the sense of envisioning forward, taking from your own origins, your own personal sourcing and community and relationship and heritage, and bringing that forward, as we can see from your own stories about bringing community together now. Where would you like to see your own business practices going in relationship? Because you have a couple businesses, right? You have the Nest and you have Shine,
Mhm.
right? How do you see that operating going forward? What do you see your role? People wouldn't necessarily identify those as community-based organizations necessarily, right? And not that they don't have help support community, right? How do you see the role of business interacting with these visions of community, creativity, heritage, and traditional medicine ways? And I realize, again, a big question, but
Goodness, that's a huge question, and also, I have been scrappily trying to figure out how to do all of the things, and so I feel like I'm at the point where when people are starting to be like, "Oh, I wanna integrate this into my practice," or "How do I get," like, "What am I supposed to do?" I see a lot of people doing it wrong, like, when it comes to business. Like, I am in California, I run a corporation and a nonprofit in California, and the amount of time I need to spend on doing, like, accounting and taxes and, like, compliance and blah, blah, like, and at like, it then I become a business operator, and I'm doing less client work and less community building, and the two entities interact with each other, in Nest being my psychotherapy practice. I have 8 other therapists that work for me that see clients through Nest. We do harm reduction work, drug education. We do community outreach. We are a Narcan and fentanyl testing strip distributor
Yes,
for
everyone get Narcan. Everyone get Narcan, and everyone test
Go
fentanyl.
to nestharmreduction.com, go to resources, click get Narcan, and we will ship you Narcan. Because it is important for me as somebody who is, again, integrating a psychedelic life, is like all drug use should be safer. Like, people should not be accidentally overdosing or dealing with or
Or
recreation.
contamination,
Right, or drug contamination. And these are real life and death issues that are happening because of the drug war. And
Yeah.
so I am not a psychedelic exceptionalist. I think we should have all access to all public health information and safety, and it should be free. That's not the greatest business model, obviously. Um, but the reality is Nest, works one-on-one with clients and families and couples, who have been positively and negatively impacted by their relationship with substances.
Yeah.
Then we also go out and do community outreach. We, teach people how to hold space for their clients. We go into communities and help communities become safer and more educated. And so I love doing the work that I do at Nest. But also, the reason that Shine is separate and the reason that Shine exists is because it is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We are, applying for grants, looking for foundational funding, taking donation, so we can hopefully take all of this, be able to get public funding and privatized funding to be able to subsidize the cost of services for people who have been harmed by psychedelics. And so we offer like case management, case consultation. When somebody reaches out to us, we do our best to do their intake and find them resources in their home environment. We are building out, it's launching hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, maybe. We will be launching a national resource database that
Oh, wow.
practitioners can sign up for, saying, "Hey, I'm in Santa Cruz or I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I want to get educated about how to work with psychedelic survivors. I want to add like ethical practice to my skill set. Can I be a resource so when somebody reaches out to me in Nashville, Tennessee, or Waco, Texas, or someplace like that, I can't see them. I'm based in California. I am also only one person, and so
Right.
there's not that many hours in a day that I can do this work. And so I am limited by all of my hands in all of these different pockets. And so really trying to find people who are mission aligned, who want to partner, who want to acknowledge that we can improve safety. Not we want to shut down the industry, we want to stop research. We don't want to do any of that. We want people to have optimal psychedelic experiences. And when they don't, we also need to address that. And so that's really
Absolutely.
where Shine is aimed at, and looking at kind of these, different funding models in psychedelics for us to be able to subsidize cost of services for those who have been harmed.
And this gets us to the sort of energy exchange reciprocity of this, right? I already love how many sources and resourcing and sourcing of yourself that you've already shared. But how can we support you in being better resourced? You mentioned being able to contribute to Shine. You mentioned looking for more people who can do this work. Is there something else that in exchange that you would hope for?
Um, that's a great question. I mean, I would love to, like, we're about to launch this resource database that we've been building in HubSpot, and please everybody sign up. Like, even if you can, give like $10 a month, $20 a month, like ask your practice, ask your doctor friends, go to the ketamine clinic that you have been working with to say, hey, I found this nonprofit. I don't know if you guys do any charitable giving or charitable programs. Like, can you reach out to them? Can you partner with them? And then also reach out to us so you can access our information, access our resources, access things like psychedelic safety flags. Um, Having been doing this work and working with this population, I this spring I'll be attending like multiple academic conferences where these are the topics at hand, and the reality is like I need to be in the room to have impact.
No, and this kind of speaks to some of the challenges that come to doing this work. Other than obviously, I think you've already kind of spoken to an extent about the personal challenges. I mean, maybe we could dig deeper on that, but because it is very personal. None of us who do this work come out unscathed, as it were. But I mean, or we're
Oh
transformed as
my
well.
goodness.
And I don't have to take us there. I'll try and keep us at a level of 3 out of 10. um, but I just want to at least admit personally that you are a resource for me, and
Yes. Oh, yes. We can talk about that.
and I mean I don't think there's anyone who I'm going to be bringing on this podcast who isn't a community resource. But I also want to acknowledge and also disclose that we're in a very conscious accountability relationship with one another, and building that relationship so that when and if something arises that either is a misstep, let's just put it that way, or something comes up, or we need help, right, where we're asking, that we can lean into each other on an as needed basis, and trying to build that kind of accountability in relationship, but also support, right? That what it really looks like to do this work isn't just about like, watch out. It's a like, okay, let's proactively build these partnerships, these relationships, these supports. So maybe you can speak a little bit about that.
Yes. Okay. I love that we're in this like intentional accountability cycle together. I think that it is beautiful, and it's a beautiful practice, and it gets us to like there have been times where for both of us people in community have reached out saying, I'm concerned about this person. Here are the reasons why. And we have been able to be like, great, I'm ready to accept some constructive feedback and ideally make some changes. I mean,
Right?
this is actually Shine. If anybody's ever started a business or done some grassroots things, oftentimes it's like the first couple of years are like throwing darts at a dartboard and also getting community feedback to be like, how do we make this better? And one of the transitions that we're doing at Shine this year is what we have found, having run peer support for a little over a year with several cohorts of people, is that the virtual peer support model is actually not enough support for people who are going through this type of harm.
Right.
Uh,
Totally. Absolutely.
right, right. Like dropping in once a week or every other week with a group of strangers, like it's not enough for them to actually build the trust in the community that needs to come out of it. And so I shifted, and we're switching our attention to building out a national resource list so we can actually attach people to people where they can build these longer term relationships. This also comes up in, if you know Steve Hassan, who wrote Combating Coercive Mind Control. Um, he is a
Around
ex-cult
cults. Yeah. Okay.
ex-cult
Continue.
member, cult expert. And he said, when people are coming out of cults, the identity shift, right? It's almost like you have to kill off's not the right word. Unalive's not the right word either, but because we're podcasting and whatever, the algorithm filters are going to, but like you actually have to like grieve a part of yourself.
Absolutely.
Grieve
Yeah.
a like, right, your belief system is being changed. It's being shifted. What you thought was safe is no longer safe. And there is a period of time where you have to deconstruct your identity and rebuild it into a new world. Now, as somebody who is divorced, um, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
We're giving that, and I actually had you like right the like I had to when you get divorced, when you separate, when you go through a big grief, when you lose a parent, when you go through a challenging psychedelic experience, when you are harmed by somebody in authority where you thought you could trust them, you have to go through a process of deconstructing and rebuilding parts of your identity. And you need somebody to be able to do that work with, who can do that work ongoing and intensively for as long as you need. And we are too small to be able to do that work. We are too startup to be able to do that work. And so there are organizations like Reclamation Collective, which works with people who have religious and spiritual harm. And they have a lovely database of individual providers. They also offer virtual support groups. And we've partnered with them because they have a lot of people reaching out who have been harmed by psychedelics. And they're like, hey, we can't actually take this influx. We're going to stay religious focused, even though there's a lot of overlap between religion and spirituality and psychedelic harm. And so just building community, finding those resources of being like, oh, if somebody reaches out to me and they fit the description of being able to be in this group, like let's send them there, right? We're not reinventing the wheel, but we're
So essential. Like this is why I love, having you here and being here in conversation and kind of not just showing some of the complexities and the intersections that show up, right? People like to kind of even silo off psychedelic practice and and say like, oh, that has nothing to do with religious trauma. Or that has nothing to do with, harms around abuse. But even though we recognize that abuse and harm happens, or narcissistic, or like the whatever sort of, or addiction, like people recognize that people use it and work with it to recover, right? But they may not see the intersectionality of all these pieces, or about BIPOC and communities, or women, or the Jewish community, and all these things, like they all kind of come together in this unique, transformative way, because I mean, at least for me, maybe I'm making a commentary here that's a little bit me focused, but um, you know, I at least noticed that we tend to be picking up the pieces that have been dropped by our society, our culture, our worlds, and the harms and the traumas, and the sort of, not just people falling through the cracks, but being, directly shot there, right? And
more more social workers need to get into the psychedelic, right? Like we're like
don't be afraid. Yeah.
marginalized people.
And maybe this could be a nice, culmination thing as we kind of wrap up this episode, is, what could you tell someone who may be curious about psychedelic practice, or business, and maybe feeling like the you've scared me now. I like to talk about the creativity and hanging out and chilling and eating, but the other stuff, I'm feeling the realness now, and how should I go into this space? What would you tell someone who's totally new, either as someone who's in an adjacent field, or as a person who's been affected by the war on drugs? What would your takeaway be for them?
I mean, like the human experience is about being curious,
Mm.
right? And so if it's piqued your curiosity and you're right, it's like an itch you can't scratch. A lot of people say, especially in the plant medicine community, it's like, no, 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 the medicine will find you. Like, it will call, it will talk to you in your dreams, it will keep showing up for you. Until you right, and it gets sometimes those signs and those calls and those signals, like, get loud. And you're like, "Oh, right, this is why people go to therapy." People are like, "There's something in my life that is intolerable, and I wanna take a look at it." And psychedelics give us access to those portals, but, like, once you open the door, you can't close it. And so, don't like, right? So if you're
Or not without support, right?
right, don't go into it without support, and if you need support, like, you can work to build that before you go into it, and you can work to build what you figure out what you need afterwards too, because you don't always know what you need when you go in.
I love that. I love that. That's a great takeaway, Erica. And I am so grateful to you. And I'm so grateful for this conversation.
More
Thank you
of
so
this,
much.
let's do more of these.
Yeah, no, yeah. So continuing, like, and we do have a hope to maybe be able to share like survivor stories, and I know that's something else you're working on, but we can't get into right now. But thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing the community resourcing that comes out of
I
this.
can't wait. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do. I'm so glad that we are in community together and that we've been talking about doing this recording. We've had to reschedule this multiple times.
Yeah,
I'm so glad it worked. I'm so glad that I was able to not have to evacuate my home today and be
I'm
able to
grateful for
be
that
here
as
with you.
well. And much love to those who are facing that right now. As a survivor of a fire myself, I appreciate what you have to go through, to be evacuated and to come back and experience. And I think that just speaks, like we can't always plan when the doors are open for us.
Yeah.
And we need this in our lives and in our worlds, and we're all on a psychedelic journey. So
Yes,
thank
we
you for
are. Right? Whether we choose to or not.
thank you for being my psychedelic life.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. This was so lovely.
As I reflect on this conversation, one of the things I love is the fact that what it means to be well resourced and to be in relationship is to be in relationship with one another, to be in community. And I hope that that's a theme that will show up again and again here. Already in the earlier episodes, also that relationship with one's own community and how that shows up both in terms of how that sense of community evolves over time. It's not static, it's dynamic, it's changing, and also how one can consciously engage and consciously nurture that. And I think Erica really exemplifies this, that she consciously engages in building community, whether it's through the Nest conference that gets mentioned in this podcast, or whether it's through her new organization of Shine, and even just demonstrated through her and I's relationship with one another, that this is something that we've cultivated over time in relationship and in community. And as you look to try and see where are your strengths and where are your edges, what doors are you willing to open, not knowing what's behind them? What doors do you need to hold more responsibly? And how can you build the support and community and relationship to create the support that you don't just need in a journey, but you need in your life? I hope you take away that little piece of sourcing and relationship. Much love. Thank you for joining me on Psychedelic Source. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and share with others in our community. And if you're a psychedelic practitioner, therapist, or coach looking to identify blind spots in your practice or determine next steps for moving it forward, take the first step by visiting psychedelicsourcepodcast.com. Until next time, remember, start low, go slow, and stay connected to your source.